I saw a video this week on Instagram or somewhere where it showed the dynamic of a relationship where you're storing things all day long and then you get home and you explode. And Bridgett texted this week and she was like, hey, I would love to do a podcast on psycholation and that feeling of just like being alone in what you're experiencing and then what that can look like and what it leads to in those moments. And so we are so excited to have Connection Code certified coach Bridgett Blood on our podcast today, where we're going to be sharing what that feels like, experiences that Bridgett has encountered herself in those feelings of psycholation and us as well. And yeah, thank you for being here. Welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open those emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in our relationships and in ourselves. I'm your host, Tera Wages, and joining me today is certified coach, sexual singles coach, like guru, helping change the world for singles, Bridgett Blood, and the incredible Phyllis Hill, who along with her husband, Dr. Glenn Hill, created and founded the Connection Codes, which is the guide to human connection. And we're so glad you're here.
Yes, absolutely. So hello, world. Hello, friends. Love, Bridgett, that you are with us today. It's always really special to us to have guests on our podcasts. And Bridgett lives life with us here in Nashville. So we talk a lot and have great conversations. And I think we should start with the wheel today just to hear what's happening with you. And if it's okay, Bridgett, we'll just have you do the wheel and then we'll just kind of jump into what's on your heart and just the topic that we want to talk about today.
This is actually helpful because I don't know what's happening with Bridgett today. I haven't gone slow enough. So this is going to be real live action. I'm curious what we'll find. Joy to be with you.
Aww.
I feel really good. I was thinking in the car, I was like, I feel way more at home in Bridgett than the last time I was here recording.
Oh, wow.
So it's been a cool journey just to continue to be like, oh, I like Bridgett. She's cool. Shame. I feel shame that I felt a little bit of shame sharing some sexual joy with you.
Oh,
of like, ooh, right. There's still that narrative in my body, even as a coach who works with a lot of singles and the beauty of processing sexual joy and sexual loneliness. There's still this cultural narrative of, ooh, you're not allowed to do that yet. Guilt. There are some home projects I hope to get done before I have family coming into town today. And there's just some messes that are just going to stay the way they are because I'm inviting someone to my home.
Wow.
Fear. Whenever I have guests here, I feel like Nashville is just such a big place. I always want to make sure their expectations of what their experience here, like it matches their dream of like, what do you want? Do you want it to be warm and cozy Franklin? Do you want it to be big city downtown? Like, what do you want the experience to be? So a little bit of fear in that. Lonely. As I am growing my coaching business, there's just a lot of lonely in building a business and what that's like. And there's 1,000 voices that tell you how to do it. And yet you have to kind of sort through what works for you and what aligns with your values. Sad. A lot of sadness. You know, we're talking about psycholation today. A lot of sadness about the places in my childhood story where it just felt safer to do it alone.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of sadness that my body still as an adult shows up and goes, oh, nope. Let's just keep people further away. It's easier to do this by ourselves. Hurt in a friendship dynamic recently where I've just felt like I've worked really hard to pursue connection and have not felt that in return. So there's some hurt there. And then we're back at joy to be together.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Did you catch anger? Did I miss it?
No, anger. On the drive here, I drove by the spot that I got rear-ended and crushed the back of my car last year. And there's always like a mixed firing of fear and anger. That was a brand new car. It was literally 2 weeks after I bought the car and crushed the whole back of the car. Thankfully, I'm okay. But there was some I'm out loud in the car. I was like, oh, fear, anger.
Yeah. Get that.
Yeah. That's intense. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think that this is such an important conversation as far as what psycholation looks like, because that's a big word that I had never even heard until working with you and Dr. Glenn. So can we kind of even explain to our listeners that were like, okay, you said this is what we're talking about today. I don't even know what that is. And I'm about to turn you off because that word feels too intense for me. What is psycholation?
Psycholation is a mixed word, meaning psychological isolation, meaning, people say I'm all in my head, or I'm in my head, I can't get back in my body. And so it's this idea that we are living a life maybe with people, partnered with people, in a room full of people, and we feel so devastatingly alone in our experience. Whether that feels like no one gets me, no one hears me, no one sees me, right? All of our core identity questions are going, nope, you don't matter to me. You have no value to me. And I don't see you, I don't hear you.
Wow.
And so that's a lot for our bodies to carry. And like I said, for my story, I learned this pattern in childhood that it actually felt safer to try to do that. We know that psychology is teaching us that doing things together is better. We know that connection codes protocol is that we can actually use less glucose in our brains when we process things together. But we often carry a story into our adulthood that says, I'm smarter if I do it by myself. I'm more mature if I do it by myself. Or it's safer for me to do it by myself. And so the idea of saying, this idea of living in psycholation, or this idea of living alone on an island in my day-to-day experiences, what if it actually is better for me to do it in community and partnership? And what does it look like for me to take one step forward into that if it feels really big and scary?
Yeah.
It's interesting, something when you said it a few minutes ago, maybe it was when you did the wheel, you referenced your childhood, like you learned that in your childhood. And I thought, oh, wow, it just took me back to the idea of what did I learn in my childhood about that? And even hearing you just now, I thought, wow, my dad was a pastor, he was a missionary, and the idea that he was put on a pedestal makes total sense to me. He was put on a pedestal, and yet he had narratives in his story that were really awful. And yet I saw and I learned that you hide all of that. No one can ever know about that. And I would say that even my dad died many years before my mom. I was only 25 when my dad passed away. And then my mom lived another 25 years after that, never remarried. But she believed to her grave that no one should ever know what my dad really did and who he really was. Like, she was convinced that it would shatter people's faith if they knew. And I think, wow, when that is what you grow up in and that is what you are taught, that is psycholation. That isolation, it's so crazy. I hear what you're saying, that idea of sometimes it feels safer, but yet I also think there's many of us that are taught you just can't. You cannot share that kind of stuff. So then we work with a lot of couples, and sometimes in a family or in a husband and wife, maybe they know what's really going on. Yeah. But there's also times when one of them is living in secrecy, and you kind of go, wow, what? For our listeners, like, I break it down to what in your life are you personally, start with yourself, you personally are just living in secret. And sometimes it's little things, maybe that you scream at your kids as a mom. And so, well, you don't want anybody to know. So that's a secret. That's a secret thing. Maybe it's your finances where you're like, oh, no one can know how far in debt we are, or that we live off of just credit cards or whatever. You may know with each other, but sometimes even with finances, couples don't communicate.
Oh, totally.
So then there's something going on there that's just in secret. There's a lot of secret. And I think it's just so damaging. And where that can lead is so damaging. So I'd love to hear more about your perspective on how that affects us. I hear the loneliness. There's definitely loneliness in that secrecy.
Right.
It's beyond that, though. There's so much damage, which loneliness is very damaging. We know that. It is very damaging to our bodies to live in that kind of loneliness.
Yeah, studies show that living in chronic loneliness is as bad as smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. And the Surgeon General released all of this information in the last 2 years about this. And so Psycholation is a huge way of how loneliness can manifest in our bodies, even without us recognizing that's what it is. I spoke at a workshop last weekend, and there was a woman there who we were kind of getting to know each other. And she shared in the first few minutes, no one has ever known my life story.
Wow.
I have never told a soul what has happened to me. And I said, oh, I said, I noticed you have a wedding ring on. Like, are you married? She was like, yeah, my husband has no idea what my life has been and what I experienced. They've been married for 20 years.
Wow.
And I just thought, wow, to carry that alone for so long, the damage that can do to our bodies. So yeah, Bridgett, I know that as you came in, you had some examples and some moments that you've experienced or you've had friends experience. And so what does that look like in playing it out?
Yeah, I'd love to start with an example for us. Last week, I had texted you. I was heading to a coffee shop and I said, hey, I'm going to be in town. Would love to connect with you. I think I might have said it. Maybe I did tell you I felt guilt that it was last minute. Because I think the last time I had reached out, it was last minute.
Yep.
But I'm in the car and in my head, I'm going, don't text. Like, I want to text Tera, but don't text Tera. Because what happens if she feels pain that it's last minute again? Is she going to lose identity with me? It's probably better just not to do it at all. And I almost literally, I think I even went to send it and then said cancel because I was in the car doing voice to text. And I was like, oh, cancel. And I was like, okay. I was like, you actually know that Tera will show up for herself and she will show up for you. And if it is painful for her, she will tell you, hey, this is painful. We need to do different. But it was that moment of I could have carried that by myself. I wanted to carry it by myself at first because it wasn't just that you were going to feel pain. It's that you were going to feel pain and move away from me. I could deal with you having pain, but it was what if Tera experiences pain with me and she pulls away? And so I think there's that example of psycholation of I have to figure this all out by myself because I have had, right? My body's had experiences where I've shown up vulnerably and said, hey, I want to connect with you. I know that I didn't give you enough, whatever that enough is. I didn't give you enough time to figure this out. And I have experienced that pull away. And so kind of stepping back in to say, oh, and I give you the opportunity, which do you remember how you responded? I don't.
I was leaving town that day.
Oh, yes. You were heading out of town.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh my gosh, if I wasn't leaving town. Yes. And I also said that I operate last minute.
Yes.
Like, don't invite me to something a week in advance, or I don't know what my life looks like in a week in advance. And so I hope that I was like, ooh, like, oh no, there's zero pain here for me. Yes.
And I even love that phrase, Elijah, and I have talked about it before of how important it is to say, oh, I don't experience pain in that.
Yes.
My best friend always says, don't say someone else's no for them. And so I think a lot of times the psycholation happens when we go, oh, I already know that this person is going to say no to me. I already know this person isn't going to want to show up. I already know this person isn't going to want to dance with me through this pain. And so we already make the no for them. And so I think kind of shifting into being brave to say, how can I take little itty bitty steps forward to say, I got to show up. And so for me in that moment, coming out of psycholation was saying, I have fear asking Tera. I'm going to ask Tera and I'm going to tell her I have fear that it's painful for you.
I get that. And then I have guilt because you followed up with another time you're going to be in town. And I haven't responded to that text message yet because I am the worst ever. And because I deal with guilt on the flip side of that because it is so busy. And so I'll actually be in Nashville that next day. And so it is interesting how we too can have such different emotions tied to the same thing, like different experiences and the fears that we have that we're going to create pain in other people. And so when we have the fear that we're going to create pain in someone else, then we just absorb the pain that we assume is going to happen, which then creates more pain for us, more psycholation for us, instead of just that reach out. And so how often do we not follow up or reach out from fear of creating pain?
What I'm thinking about is that I have had relationships where, because you were saying you have fear of the possibility, where I'm thinking, oh, no. I've had relationships where I know that's going to happen. And so it's like what you said to begin with, going back to your own childhood, you learned it's safer to just deal with stuff yourself. And so I think that, and we have mentioned this a lot, if you're in the connection codes world, that you may have to question who some of your people are. Like, do you have safe people? Do you have safe people? We've lived in Nashville 25, 26 years. And I remember when we first moved here, we were starting over, knew no one. I remember we had this mindset, we're going to find our soulmates. And our kids two of them were teenagers, two of them were younger than that at the time. And I remember really being aware that It's part of growing up. It's part of becoming an adult. Like when you're in high school or even grade school, you just have a ton of friends.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people experience that in college. They just have a ton of friends. But that's not the real world, that we just have a ton of friends.
Mhm.
And we may have what we think is a ton of friends, but those safe friends, what I call the soulmates,
Mhm.
they're very few and far between. And don't take that for granted. And work to have those, like find those people that you are safe with, that you can live life with,
Yeah.
and pour the energy into that. Because I think for some of us, we put ourselves in friend groups where it's exhausting because we can't be authentic.
Yeah.
We are lonely when we're in the groups. We get hurt, but we accept the pain, like as in, wow, she's always rude to me, or he's always obnoxious to me. But we just accept it. Like, well, this is our friend group, so I'm just going to stay in this. What I've learned, and Tera, I think we've talked about this a lot, is then you just have no capacity to go out and actually find healthy relationships because you're maxed out. And I think sometimes we have to take inventory of that and go, okay, am I living in psycholation because of the fear of being judged or the fear of no one will like me if I'm just honest? Are we living in psycholation because we think that we need to or have to? Like we have so much shame around our finances, or we have so much shame about other parts of our lives, like where we try to show up always looking like we have it together, but we really don't. And are we hiding something, or is part of it that we are really not in safe places?
Yeah. 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 I totally see that as a common thread, especially for, I think, men and women. I don't think that that's necessarily a gender thing at all, but we do reach a point where we don't know how to be vulnerable with the adult stuff. It was easier when we were kids and we're upset that you stole my toy and that kind of thing. But today, to have to process with a friend when you're feeling pain, nope. That is so foreign to so many people. And we also just get busy in our own lives. You know, and Bridgett, I loved before we press play, you were talking about even being in a marriage relationship, how we depend on our spouses for all of that. We live in pain all day long, and then our spouse walks in the door, and then we pain dump on them. And it's a lot to handle. And so can you talk a little bit more about what your train of thought was in that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, even thinking about the relationship norm, we talk about a lot, even in dating, like, oh, this guy's dating her now. We're not going to see him. It's like he pulls away from his friends. She pulls away from her friends. And it's all this love swoony, oh my gosh, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me thing. And then that honeymoon wears off and you go, oh no, you're a human? I thought you were just this hot person. Now you're an actual human. And now a lot of times we've damaged relationships because we make it into this, you're the source of my life, which is really hard for any human to carry. Obviously, I hope that in your romantic partnerships that your person is the person that you feel safe with, that you do come alive with, that you have that core deep connection. But you need to have people.
Yes.
You cannot expect that you're just going to get married and be with one person and they're going to be your sole source of emotional connection for your day. And so I think in that, what does it look like to have people that you both trust to say, hey, we can process things with each other.
Yeah.
Right? I watched you and Glenn model that very beautifully of, hey, there's been so many times when you guys have had a miss with each other and you say, oh, I walk in the room and I say, hey, what's happening? You go, oh, we just missed each other. We're actually in pain right now. And so it breaks the stigma that you have to be this perfect couple where everything is wonderful all the time. And it creates space for community and connection. Thinking about that part, especially if you're into connection codes, your life is changing, your marriage is changing, your relationship to yourself is changing. Sometimes it can be like, oh, well, what do I do with all the friends that don't know connection codes? Because now I'm in this different place. I'm using these different words. They might not get me. And I've had the experience of both. I mean, a lot of my best friends, I've taught them all connection codes. Hey, listen to this podcast. Hey, we're going to start oohing each other. This is what ooh means. Or, hey, it would really mean a lot to me if when I express an emotion, you would just ask me what's happening with that, right? And so we're kind of teaching each other as we go. And those relationships have become so safe, which I think you can grow and lean in that. And so I think for me, a lot of the time, it's just acknowledging that it's scary. Like acknowledge the core fear of, I want to be seen. I want to be chosen here. And so me stepping out and asking for that connection is really hard. Like with what Phyllis said, I have all these experiences where it wasn't, but there also are people that want to show up for me. I feel like I've been working a lot on that theme. This past fall, I took a class on how to be a leader through understanding sexual story work and sexual trauma. And so with that, like I was invited deeper into my sexual story than I have ever really looked at before. And so I'm sitting with these group of therapists and coaches and pastors, and we're all kind of growing together, learning together, a group of men and women. And one of the feedback I got was, hey, Bridgett, I'm curious if you're perpetuating a cycle where you keep yourself lonely. And immediately I was really offended by that. I was like, what? I don't keep myself anything. I just experience lonely. I wanted to like go in this big connection codes protocol dump. And I was like, wait a second. We may have missed each other with language, but what's actually happening with that for me? And I went, oh, I do feel safer. I think some of that is the Enneagram 4 thing where it's like, I'm unique. No one else feels the same amount of sadness that I do. Right. But there's this place of, there's a lot of places in my life where I've already decided that people don't want to show up. I feel like that was a fear in the tangent of 800 thoughts right there. I forgot what your original question was.
No.
Oh, but for couples.
Yes. Well, and so one of the points that you made reminds me of an Esther Perel TED Talk that she gave that I think found out about a couple of years ago. And it was so mind-blowing. And she talks about how we expect our partner to be everything. Our provider, our protector, our comedian, our lover, our therapist. Like there are so many hats that we expect this one person to carry. And it's simply too much for one person to be the only person that we are regulating with. And to go from that to this like sexy time to like now take care of the kids. It's just too much. And it was such a wake up call of like, oh, what are my expectations? Because we used to live village style, or like this was the funny person of it. Like we had all of these different areas and different friendships, but we are living so much more isolated now than previously. And social media plays a huge role in that because we feel connected, but we're not connected. So what expectation do we have for each other in those relationships? And so what I'm hearing and taking away from this conversation is, okay, no, we need our safe people. That way, if I get dysregulated during the day, it's not 100% only Wes that can fill that void for me. And that I don't just stay stuck in it because now I don't want to put that on him. I have other people that I can connect with. So I've talked about this on the podcast. I have the 5 people you spend the most time with is who influences you. So I try to keep people in my life. Like I know who my encourager friend is. I know who my challenger friend is. That when I need to be challenged on something, she is who I can reach out to. Like I know who can speak truth into me and help me see different things, and having these different roles of how we show up for people and how people show up for us. And also in that, I think about couples that your partner isn't the safe person for you to share with. So you're experiencing all of this all day long. And then now you have no one that you can process with. And what that does, the deepness of that psycholation, we're not just living in it from 9 to 5, we're living in it 24 hours a day. And so I think this is so important in really taking stock of who is in my life. How am I processing these moments in the day? Am I storing them and waiting to just upheave on this one person? Or do I have people that I can contact in my life?
Well, 2 things of that. Number 1, can we actually paint a picture for what is a safe person? And then I would love to talk about how do you break out of isolation?
Yeah.
So I would say a safe person is someone who can see the goodness in everyone involved in the situation, whether that's you and your partner, you and your family member, you and your coworker, and honor the pain that both people experienced without making you either the villain or making the person that you're experiencing pain with the villain. Because that's when it kind of can step into that gossip realm of, oh, I'm just telling you stuff to get you on my side to say that this person is bad. So I think for me, that's kind of one of my safe things is like, hey, do I actually believe that when I show up to my best friend and say, I'm feeling so much pain with Phyllis today, I would tell Phyllis, I'm feeling pain with Phyllis, but to say, oh, I'm feeling so much pain with Phyllis today. She said this thing and my reaction is so big. Can you help me process it? So that I can go back to her and actually clearly articulate, hey, this is where I feel like we missed each other. I'm feeling a lot of pain here, right? I know that person believes 100% that Phyllis is good and worthy of love. For me, that's how I know that a safe person is. When I'm sharing stuff with people, maybe it's a frustration of a job situation, and they're like, oh yeah, well, that person's just a terrible person anyway. I'm like, ooh, well, I don't feel safe. If you're going to judge them, then you're going to judge me.
Well,
right? And so for me, that's a safe. It doesn't mean that they're not calling it out. They might say, oh, wow, curious about the hurt. Yeah, there's some alarms that go off in me when you tell me this person is speaking to you this way, right? It's not like they're going to just gloss over pain. But do they champion both people? I think that for couples too. I have so many couple friends in my life where they are sharing deep, intimate details with me of like, hey, we missed each other. We went to go have this sexual connection and this is what happened for me. Now, I'm not necessarily knowing the play-by-play of what's happening, but I'm still hearing it because I champion and value their marriage. And they both partners know that. Both partners know that I'm for them and I love them and I'm committed to their flourishing, and the same. So I might talk to one partner and have a conversation and the other partner knows, hey, our marriage is safe with her. I know that if there's ever something that we process, that she's not going to come with judgment. She's going to come with curiosity, maybe some pain. She has the right to push back and ask questions, but she's going to come safely. For me, I don't know, curious for you, how do you define what makes a person safe for you?
well, I really do love what you just said. I instantly thought that for me, a safe person is not going to try to fix me.
Yeah.
A safe person can hear me. And that's the power of the ooh. I want it to be audible. I need you to be audible, not just glass over and stare at me, because then I just assume you're judging me. So it's that, can I just be raw and real with you? I do like the next step, that I can trust that if I'm processing pain with other people, that you will still love those people and that you won't just jump in and add what you would consider gossip. Like, well, yeah, I don't like them either. Or yeah, they're horrible. So, but I think that for me, my instant is, can this person just carry what I'm sharing? And I value that a lot for a safe person.
The word that was coming to my mind is disregard.
Yeah.
So I love the three different, like fixing and holding space for both. And I think about, can I share something and you're not going to disregard what I am sharing? Because a lot of the pain that I experience, even this week, I have a lot of pain in the political climate of America and the world. So much pain. And Wes Wages is the most amazing man on earth. And he doesn't and can't hold all of that pain. And so I was out with some girlfriends and we were sharing and processing with each other. And so to be able to share these things and not be told it's stupid that you feel that way, or it's just politics, like it doesn't matter, because for me, it's so much deeper than that. And so to not be disregarded, no matter what it is that I'm experiencing or sharing, but they can hold that and see like, ooh, this is pain for her in whatever topic that is.
Well, I think that's really important too, that we do have different friends for different needs.
Exactly. Yes.
Right? It's this idea like one person, first of all, I know how complex it is to be human in Bridgett's body. I can't be everything for everybody all of the time. Right? And so to say, oh, I have my health friend that I'll often, call her, Marco Polo her, say, hey, I found this new supplement, curious your thoughts on it, or whatever it is. Or if I have a business thing, I had a really cool moment this week with a connection coder friend. He called me and he was like, hey, do you have a moment? I'm really flooded. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And so he processed with me. It was maybe 6 minutes, right? It wasn't a long conversation. It was between 2 meetings. And I said, ooh, I'm feeling some guilt. I actually felt the need to reach out to you this week and process some things, but I felt fear. Again, it's that pattern that keeps showing up for Bridget's body. And it was really cool. I've definitely felt some guilt where it actually hurt our friendship for me not to show up and share my need. He was like, oh, Bridget, what's happening with that? Please call me. Like, if you need me, please call me. The worst thing that happens is I say, oh, I can't answer the phone right now. And you can text me and I'll call you back. There was a really cool reel I saw this week with Simon Sinek. He talked about his 8-minute friend, where he had a friend that texted him and she just said, hey, do you have a moment? And he missed the message. And then she came back the next week and was like, oh, I was really struggling last week. And he's like, what? He's like, why didn't you call me? She's like, I did. I texted you. And he goes, oh, I missed it. He's like, can we have like a code phrase? And so his phrase is, do you have 8 minutes? And so it's the idea of I'm showing up for 8 minutes and it's just our code. And I actually might steal that and start using that with my friends of, hey, do you have 8 minutes? Which means I need you to show up for me.
Wow.
Because we can't process all the things all the time. And there's so much. Right? There's so much to process throughout the day, which is really why I like text messaging. There are so many moments throughout the day where I will text a friend or a friend will text me and it'll literally be one sentence. So much sadness right now. And I might just heart it and say, ooh, I hear you. I'm in a meeting. I can call you this afternoon. Or what do you need? Or what's happening? I have a friend who has a lot of kids. And so she'll text me and say, wow, I'm just feeling really flooded. We have to go here. And then we have to go here. And then I got to get home and get the kids. And then we got to have dinner ready. And I forgot that the dog had a vet appointment. And I just go, ooh, I hear you so hard. And that is the ooh. It is not a space for a 10-minute conversation. It's not even that they need that. And so I think just having those little moments of processing it with your body through a text message, it might not feel like a lot, but it gets you to see and to be seen by someone else.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you just said that, because I got a text message last night from a dear friend, and she said, oof. She told me where she was. She was at an event, and she said, I'm just flooded with fear. And first, I'd have to look at my phone and see exactly. But at first, I just oohed her. And then I realized, okay, I need to actually ask her what's happening with the fear, because I assumed, which is never, ever good. I then said, what's happening with the fear? And then she responded, oh, it's just 3 feet of fear.
That's good.
Which was so good for me to hear, because I assumed she was at a really high level of fear. My mind was kind of going down that road in a fast way. So then when I said, what's happening with fear? And she said, well, just 3 feet of fear. I haven't been in a situation like this in a long time. Something like that. I was like, oh, I hear you. And then I gave her this, you got this, girl. Like, I believe in you. And then today she followed up and she said, okay, I just have to real quick send you a text message and say, wow, just texting you that I felt fear and you responded, my fear went down to like nothing.
Wow.
And that's all she had done. Like, she wasn't in a setting, I think, where she shared it with anybody else. But so it is interesting to me that just what you're saying, to have those relationships. I love the code word thing where you go like, oh, this is bigger and it needs whatever, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, like just, and then you kind of know, okay, how can I get to that? Can I go to the bathroom? I'm at work, but I can go to the bathroom. I can get on a quick.
The competitive part of me is like, it takes Simon Sinek 8 minutes. It only takes us 4. The Enneagram 3 achiever in me, I'm like, oh yeah, we've got this down way faster than 8 minutes, buddy.
So I use the term matching. That's kind of my code word where I'll say, hey, I need you to match me. Like, I might send a voice memo. Please don't listen to this until you can give me your full attention. So if it's not, it might just be hey, you can engage with me not half-heartedly, but sometimes it's only 2 or 3 feet of fear. So I just need someone to heart the message just to see me. I don't need to have a big conversation. There are other times where I send something and I say, hey, I'll literally start the message. Hey, I'm going to need you to match me on this. Please wait to respond until you have space. And that just kind of lets them know, hey, what I need and my expectation, and asking like, this feels, I have 100 feet of fear on this. I know that's not really, it's way bigger than the scale, but I feel like I'm so flooded beyond my max. Or if it's it's okay, we can respond together.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the examples that you gave too, of just recognizing who those different people are that you can reach out to. I think that's extremely important. And your friend knowing that you were the person last night, Phyllis, to reach out to. And then Bridgett, like when you're experiencing health things or different types of things, like, okay, who is my person that I can be safe with to reach out to about this specific topic? Because you're right. We are such complex individuals.
Yeah.
And so knowing our complexities, to expect one person, our spouse included, to hold all of that is a lot. And so I also love in sharing and hearing what does make someone safe. And I always like to take that a step further whenever I'm doing, I actually today in my coaching call, the assignment that I gave the girls last week was list out your 5 people you spend the most time with and like, how do they make you feel? But I like to go a step further. How am I making other people feel? Like, what role am I playing in other people's lives? Am I safe? So just doing that check within myself of, ooh, did I disregard their experience? Was I safe for the other person that they were sharing about? Did I try to fix them in that moment? Where am I missing with those around me? And so I think that it's easy for us to just look at how other people are affecting us. But as connection coders, we have the tools to be able to show up and do those things. So are we following suit in that? Yeah. Are we holding space? Are we being safe for them and for our partner? That's just something that I always want to add in, that it's so important that we look at ourselves as well in that. Because I do think that I have friends that I am very safe for.
Yeah.
But then my sister calls, I may not be as safe. There are definitely people that like these old relationships that are super old that I easily click back into that old pattern. My mom, I can click back into that old pattern. I'm like, whoa, I've got to check myself. And it's easier even for me to do it with my mom than it is my sister. I find myself resorting back to old me very quickly. So being aware of that, being aware of how we are showing up in that time, I think is vital. And I love the examples of like, okay, so how do we get out of isolation? And what you just shared. So stealing that idea of, hey, I need you to match me, or can I have 8 minutes? And knowing who that person is that you're going to reach out to.
Okay, so that was the two questions, because the first one was, what do you consider safe? What does that mean? And then the second one was, how do you get out of isolation? And I think that for some listeners, what I'm picturing right now is that you're drowning. You're already drowning. And you go, I can't make time for one more person. I cannot make time.
I feel that.
So, okay, let's speak to that. Like, what if you are in that place where you're just drowning? What do you do? How do you, what do you do?
I would love for somebody to tell me. I actually processed this with a friend at the workshop last week. We like stayed up in the hot tub with each other, just like sharing life. She's become a very, very close friend of mine. And I was like, I'm scared to meet new people because I don't have capacity for other people at this point. And I feel so much guilt about that. Because I want to love people well. But even Bridgett, you text me, hey, are you free on this date next week? And I'm like, I get flooded instantly, even with people I care about, because like, oh, my capacity is at its max here. Because I have been very fortunate. I've collected friends throughout my life and kept them. It's like I had dinner 2 nights ago with my college roommate and one of my closest friends. And we've been friends for 20 years. So that's a great point of like, what do we have capacity for? I was coaching someone yesterday and trying to like even coach her through greeting her husband when she gets home, but acknowledging like you're at your capacity. The thought of even standing up and giving your, like that feels a lot. That's heavy. And I've been there and I get that. So like somebody coach me.
I have 2 thoughts. First thought is, please tell me. I would much rather you say, hey, flooded, I don't have space to respond to you. Obviously, I hope we have safety in that. If we need to do anything to change safety so that you feel safe to do that, please tell me I'm flooded. I don't have space to respond to this. 2 things come to mind. I think a memory with my best friend, like my core co-regulator. I talk to her every morning unless we can't, like every day we're talking and starting our day processing together. And the other day I was like, I have processed the same pain point with you probably hundreds of times. It got stirred up for me in August. So now we're in January. I have processed it probably most days since August. And I said the other day, I said, what would happen if I just take the next month and I just don't talk to you about it anymore? Because you have to be sick of me hearing, like you must be sick of me talking about this. And she goes, well, we've learned that Bridgett's body doesn't really like when she's not honest about her experience. So I would rather you just keep telling me that it's a pain point until your body's ready to release it. And I feel so much shame because I'm like, oh, I'm just going to not talk to you about this anymore.
Well,
and then the other thought just about self-trust. I think we've talked about that a little bit on a podcast together before. That's a core value for me. Is self-trust means I build a track record for me that I show up. And so I had that experience yesterday where I had a new person come into my life and so much joy. Hey, I'd love to connect with you. And as soon as they said, I want to connect with you, I am like, I'm maxed out. I cannot possibly have one more reoccurring Zoom meeting. I cannot have one more coffee connection. I'm maxed. And so I felt myself pull away, be like, oh, cool, that's nice. And I was like, okay, what's happening for me right now? So when I'm doing a wheel with me, when I feel that, it's just safer. I keep using that word because that's how my body experiences it. But I have to do it by myself when that shows up for me. I'm going to number 1, do a wheel. What's happening with me? And then I'm going to say, oh, I actually have trust that I know how to process pain with people. So if I say, I feel so much joy, or I'm going to go to the core, I feel so much joy that you want to connect. I would love to connect with you. I'm feeling so much shame because I do not have the capacity for that right now. I have fear of you hearing that you don't matter to me. You do matter to me. And I want to give you the best that I have to give. And I just don't have that right now. Would it be okay if you text me next month and we'll follow up again for a coffee date when I have more space? But often we keep all of that in our body, don't slow down to even recognize that's happening for us. And then we're so flooded, we try to stunt double it, like, oh, sure, cool, maybe. Instead of just saying, oh, I don't have space. I hear that might be painful. If they say, oh, if they're mad about it, they get to be mad about it. We know how to dance together. We have people that we can pull in our life and say, hey, I missed with this person. They felt a lot of pain with me.
I also think that for most people, even saying that sentence feels weird.
Oh, it feels terrifying.
Because it's not natural to say things like that.
Flooding.
We are so used to just being like, yeah, okay, and moving on and praying that they don't text us or call.
Yes, I so feel that.
And so I think that it is this such a delicate balance because there's fear in that person of even being vulnerable to be like, hey, you want to hang? Because for me, the answer is absolutely I do.
Yes.
Yeah, like let me clear my calendar for you. And in fact, my college roommate, she was here until 4:00 yesterday. And the night before she said, so what do you have tomorrow? And I looked at my calendar. I was like, I have 6 meetings.
Yep.
I have 6 meetings. And I was like, I would have cleared my calendar. I would have not booked a single thing if I knew you're going to be here all day. There's just so much pain in both sides of it.
Yeah.
So I agree in the fact that it is creating that language of meeting someone in their vulnerability and recognizing they were vulnerable enough to share with me, hey, I would love to spend time with you. And so for us to also be willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because vulnerability breeds safety.
Yep.
Safety breeds vulnerability. Like that's the first line in the book of the connection codes. When you open up that first cover, that's what it says. And so when we can recognize someone's vulnerability and be willing to meet them there in that vulnerability and share exactly what you just said. I have so much joy thinking about that. I would love to do it. Can you follow back up with me next month?
Yep.
Is huge. Mm-hmm. And I think that what it does is then you're not walking away from the conversation feeling shame, feeling fear, feeling guilt. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise you leave there feeling such a weight on you. And that's where the psycholation comes. Because then we feel all of those emotions all day, every day, instead of processing that joy that you even asked. So I think that's incredibly powerful.
Back to if you're listening and you're the one who is just drowning, you're flooded, you're going, I don't want to live in psycholation, but I don't know, I don't have the capacity to do one more thing. I just got to experience a road trip with Echo. We're going to get her in the studio. She's going to do some podcasts with us, but she's a mama of 6. One of them is a year-old and very needy, which I think most 1-year-olds are. And Echo, as she would share with you, is maybe drowning is a good word. So we have this road trip together, which her husband supported 100% and is home other than with the baby. We brought him with us, but is home with the baby. And a lot of what she shared, which she would be open to share with you as well, is that life is really tough right now. It's a season. She's in a season for sure. It is a good reminder. Your body just had a baby a year ago. We know scientifically that it usually takes 2 years for everything to get back to normal as far as hormonal. Maybe that's not even a good thing to put out there because for some, maybe it takes 3. Maybe it takes longer, so it takes time. We are in a fast-paced world, faster than ever. Echo and I talked about that. When I was having babies, the expectation was less. The busyness was less. It just was. I think that, though, what's important is it gets back to, which we've done podcasts on, we talk about this. What are your pain points? What are your joy points? It's slowing down enough to find your needs. What are your needs? We talked a lot. Echo and I talked a lot about that on this trip. And what are the solutions? And we talked about capacity versus desire. And that's going to be a podcast for sure. We have a lot of desires, but what is our capacity? And even practically, I wrote out, I have a desire to travel, but do I have the capacity to travel right now? A desire to spend time with my friends, but do I have the capacity? And part of it got back to, I need to listen to my body. What is my body saying? Even as far as a trip, do I have the desire? Yes. But do I have the capacity? How's my body responding to the idea of going on a trip in the next few weeks? What's happening with my body? That's one. But that means you also have to learn how to tune into your body, which a lot of us were not taught at all to do. So that may be where you are in your journey to figure this out, express your need. And I know for Echo, she thought she was supposed to be able to do it all. And Chaz is the provider, her husband. Like, you just go work, I'll do everything else. And then she realized, I can't do everything else. It's killing me. We need to partner better. I need to share with you my need. And he's showing up, but he had to be told, here's my need. So that's huge that we actually share our need. I need your partnership in this. I need your help in this. She realized, and what we did on this trip that was so incredible, she called it a dream life. I called it dream solutions. So with her husband, they're talking dream life. Why not? Just put it out there. My dream life. I said, okay, I love that, but I love dream solutions because we still have to make it practical. A lot of what I heard and I addressed, and we did a lot of like, write that down, is getting help. I think when you realize, wait, I can't do all this, and to go, okay, I need help. And that's not a judgment. It's not that you're broken and that's why you need help. Tera and I have this conversation a lot.
We're going to hire somebody.
Yes, we talk about this a lot, where Tera did something this week that I'm still mad about. She spent her time putting together boxes to take to the post office and went to the post office, which took so much of her time. Like, Tera, your time needs to be spent completely different, which she knows. It's like, yes, we need help and we need to hire help. And I know sometimes that step is overwhelming. You go, I don't know how to hire help. I don't know how. And I've used that in my own story where I'm just like, I don't know how to do that. But then it's that dream solutions. Like, you got to talk to someone where they can help you have dream solutions. And I did that with Echo. And one of the things that came from that was that Glenn and I will be with their children, which they have 5 at home. We will be with them every Friday night. That's just going to be now a new normal. Now, we do travel. So when we're out of town, that doesn't work. But she can just count on that. And it's like, the more she dreams, the dream solution, it wasn't just a date night with her and Chaz, because they asked us last year, could we go away one weekend every quarter? We said, sure, absolutely. We sold our house in October. That made that a little more complicated. But it's like, okay, we'll come to your house. But then I realized y'all need it more than once a quarter. So what about every Friday night? Y'all just go away. Come back on Saturday. I think for her, it was like, are you serious? I'm like, why not? Let's do it. That's a dream solution. Now, remember the word dream, because your dream solutions can't always happen, but it's a dream solution. And so I'm like, let's just try it. Let's just go home and try it. So now every Friday night, which this happens to be, today is Friday. Is today Friday?
It is.
Oh, holy moly. Okay. So tonight's the first night where, yeah, we're going to be there. We're going to spend the night at their house. We're going to take care of the baby all night, whatever that means. They're going to have a date night and they don't have to come back until Saturday morning. And that is a dream solution. And we stepped in. We said yes to that.
Yeah.
Now, not everybody has grandparents available for the dream solution. It may have to look differently. But I think that if you're drowning, you've got to find some dream solutions. And you got to talk to people who can help you dream in the solutions and then also make those solutions a reality.
Yeah.
Which is just huge.
Yeah. I love that. Of course, you call it dream solutions. I love you so much. Task oriented. You speak to my soul in that. And yeah, I think that where we get stuck in that as we're wrapping up is we can't come up with the solutions because we are living in psycholation.
Yeah.
And when we're in isolation, we can't see the bigger picture of what's available to us, of what we can do, even recognizing our pain. We live in pain and we can't see it because we are used to the boiling water around us.
Yeah.
And it took Echo being in the car with you, co-regulating with you, having someone to feed that energy off of, see the holes that we miss, where's the water boiling, at what temperature, to recognize what those solutions can even be. And so what I am taking away from this, and Bridgett, I'm so glad that you came on today and brought this conversation forward, because we all experience it at different ways to a certain extent. And I'm seeing it in everyone that I am coaching right now, the psycholation that they are in all day, every day. And then the pain that revolves around them from that. And definitely where they started to where they are now through coaching has been a huge benefit. And so that's also an option. Okay, you're like, where do I do this? How do I find a friend that I can talk about all these hard things with? Like, we have certified coaches. And yes, is that an expense? Yes, but many of them are an expense that you could budget every month. Like it is not outside of the realm of possibility by any means. And we have coaches for every single, whether you are military, we have somebody going through that's working with musicians, whether you are single, Spanish, French, German, like we have coaches that really work with all different types of people. Even just working with someone for 6 weeks, for 8 weeks to help you come up with these solutions for yourself, to help break that cyclation so you can find the group of people in your community that you can offer that support to and not just depend on one person for everything or have no one. And so my mission in this, I know Glenn and Phyllis have their heart in this, but my big thing is just to not stay stuck. We say that all the time on this podcast, and cyclation can keep you stuck.
Yep.
Can we leave with an action step?
Yeah. What's your action step that
An
you're
action
feeling?
step is to go to connectioncodes.co/coaches.
Okay.
A lot of our coaches have a free discovery call. So if you are drowning and saying, I cannot do this one more day by myself, you don't have to commit. It's a conversation. You can just break the silence and just tell one of our incredible coaches, I'm drowning here and I need partnership, what that looks like. So that's going to be my brave action step, is to go ahead and book a discovery call with one of our coaches and then tell us on social media, tell us, you can send a message to Connection Codes, send us an email and just say, I booked it.
Yeah.
You are so worthy of the life that you long for.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful quote by Kate Bowler in her poem on For When You're Lonely. And it says, would you remind me that I am loved and that I am not too much and that the details of my life deserve a record kept by another.
I love that.
Wow.
I love her books. I have 2 of them downstairs. That's incredible. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We will end there. There will be a link in the show notes where you can access our coaches. It will also be in our newsletter if you're not already getting our newsletter. And if you don't have the core emotion wheel, that is going to be in the show notes because really that's how you get in touch. That's how you can find that pain. That's how you can recognize what is even firing in your body. For Bridgett to be able to access, I feel joy that you said this. I feel guilt that I don't have the capacity. She can do that because she has trained her body to recognize what's happening. And so thank you again, Bridgett, for being here. Thank you to our listeners for showing up every single week. You are absolutely incredible. And are you ready to close it out? Do you know? Okay. We do this because
you need this.
You deserve this. So let's do this.
Let's do this. Thank you for being Glenn, Bridgett.